So on this episode, we're going to talk about anxiety, tools to overcome anxiety, uh, some of the stigmas that come with being vulnerable with your friends and people at work, and talk about being of service to help curb that anxiety.
Man, I need to get one of those rocks, dude. That was good.
Dude, always,
That was
always brought
good.
to you, always brought to you by False Motivation Coffee. Be sure that you go to falsemotivationcoffee.com, buy yourself a bag, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yum, yum. Get you some.
Yeah.
Also, another sponsor who he doesn't know it yet, Reading Vape Shop. For all your vape needs, contact Lucas.
Treasury of quotes. Guide us with your knowledge.
All right, real quick, got another quote. The few who do are the envy of the many who only watch. Because doers do.
I like it.
You a doer?
I'm a doer.
That's right.
I was in the Marine Corps. I'll do anything.
$20, dude. $20 is $20.
Exactly.
I just don't volunteer for shit anymore.
Right?
Does the Forest Service do they do voluntold like the Marine Corps did?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But now I'm at the point where I do the volunteering.
The voluntelling.
Voluntelling.
Yeah.
With the holidays, with Thanksgiving tomorrow and Christmas right around the corner, like, this is a major time for depression for a lot of people. So
why do people have a depression around the holidays like this? Is it that being away from people, or is it just the fact that you feel like you're supposed to be somewhere better and you're not?
I don't know.
It's stress. It's just stressful. The lights, the music, the sounds, the amount of people that's out. Like for me, like those are all, I'll say triggers. I don't like using that word, but like,
Ew.
I know, right? But it's true, right? Like all the lights, all the noise, the Christmas music. Like you can't even go into a grocery store without bumping into someone or touching them. Then you got to talk to people. Come on, like it just creates anxiety.
Yeah.
Chill out, Grinch.
I was gonna say you sound like the Grinch.
Fuck.
probably.
Come on, speak for yourself, weirdo.
So I love Thanksgiving and Christmas, but like, so I got home from work this morning. This afternoon I got home about 1:00, and I was just helping my wife get ready because we're gonna have, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 6, including my family, including like the people that live in this house. We're gonna have 16 people at the house tomorrow.
Oh wow!
And
yeah,
8 of those half of them are kids. The oldest being 7, 8,
sure,
oldest being 8. So, and I think I think for a lot of people too, finances, right? We were like from November to January for a lot of people is the most expensive time of year. For us, the most expensive time of year is summer because like everybody had babies in the summer, so we've got a ton of birthdays and that kind of stuff. But for a lot of people, Christmas and between Thanksgiving and Christmas is like the most expensive time of year. And for a lot of trades, it's also the slowest time of year for work. So
that's a really good point.
That can be a struggle for a lot of people.
I love Thanksgiving because it's not about holidays. It's not about gifts. It's about family, right? It's all about being there.
Right.
Yeah.
But Christmas is turned in.
Go ahead.
Christmas is turned into this giant commercial. I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
I've even so last year I made a point. I tried to limit the number of gifts I bought my kid. Like obviously I'm like, well, I want to give him everything, right? Yeah. But I'm still like 90% of what I got him, he doesn't play with.
Yep. How old's your boy? If you don't mind me asking.
6. He's 6.
6, yeah.
Every kid ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine would take him apart the first day. And build other stuff.
I'm gonna be right back, boys. I'm gonna go grab my headphones. I can barely hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
Proceed.
Another thing too, right? Like, especially for like another issue with the holidays, right? Is like missing friends, missing family, right? Like it brings up all those tough memories. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
and that's just added to all the other stuff, right? The finances and the triggers and all that stuff, right? But there's workarounds.
So I'm curious. So, you speak about mention about getting together with friends and family a lot. I grew up like in an Italian family on the East Coast, right? Out of like most of my family was in the Boston, Everett area, so they all talk like the Boston, New England is. But it was big family communities, right? Every holiday, everyone was together. Your houses were insane. Like it was just chaos. Like your house is about to be, Kevin. It was just pure chaos. It was one of my absolute favorite parts of the holidays. But as I've gotten older, like I feel like the entire tradition is like almost out the window, and everyone kind of all the cliques are smaller, families are separate. I don't know if it's just my family, but that's what it feels like. Feels like the old traditions of getting together and building that family community is just kind of gone.
I I so like my side of the family is not like super close, like my mom's dad and that family, they do a lot of stuff together. And then my dad's family's more or less gone. I've got a couple uncles, but they're all kind of disconnected from each other. So I don't really spend a lot of time with my family, but my wife's family, my father-in-law, her dad is really, really big on family. And he taught me a lot about like the importance of making an effort, even if it doesn't seem like it's going to pay off, which is why I have so many people coming over tomorrow. We're kind of a central point, so it
Mhm.
works out for everybody meeting here. And it's definitely, I think that spirit you're talking about, that everybody coming together is definitely still a thing. I think it's gotten lost a little bit because of like the commercialization of our holidays. So it's something that you have to make an effort if you want. Some people don't. Some people would rather just be home, and I get that too. When I have this many people over at the house, I love being able to provide a place for all these kids to come and play, and for all of us to sit around a big table and eat meals and play card games and stuff. But also, I find myself periodically having to like disconnect and just take a breather. I'll disappear to the room for a little bit, or walk outside for a little bit and just get away from everybody, because just the noise, like, it's a lot. It's a lot.
45-minute bathroom break.
Yeah, yeah. I'm in there on TikTok.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I guess I'm on the West Coast nowadays, and all my family's on the East Coast, so yeah, it definitely has happened. But I also noticed that my family doesn't get together with a lot of their family. But yeah, it's definitely probably something more relative to where I'm at now.
yeah.
My family, anyway. Do you guys have
What
those
about you?
quiet uncles that show up and sit in silence and don't talk to anyone?
I
So,
think
I
I might be
uh,
that one.
mean,
so growing up, I grew up in foster care. Me and my twin brother, and
together?
the we had the our foster parents, Bob and Janet. Like their whole thing was to get siblings back together. So
No, that's all.
they got yeah, they got me and my brother, and then but there was like 14 kids at one time, right? I mean, it was insane. And then all their family would come up, and you talk about like crazy uncles sitting in boats talking to themselves, like fight fights, people calling the cops on themselves. Like it's absolutely insane, right? Like we've all kind of dissipated since then, but I grew up like that as well. Just, Thanksgiving is it's still my favorite holiday because it's not about, I don't have to like buy a gift for something. I can just cook, and I love cooking for people. So
Mhm.
like that's Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday.
It's my
But
favorite as well. That's my
Oh,
hands down favorite holiday of the year.
and Chris's food is fire. So good. Very nice. What are you making
and
this
I'm
year?
I'm doing a spatchcock smoked turkey.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. You wanna do a leg off, dude? You wanna do a leg off?
Dude, I'm not doing a turkey this year. My
Who's
father-in-law
doing the
is deep
turkey?
fr My father-in-law is deep frying a turkey. So we could do a leg off. I could bring you a leg.
Nah,
Yeah, take
I don't do
I'm
responsibility,
smoking.
smoked
take
turkey,
full
bro.
credit for it. Like,
Yeah, I'm smoking a ham though. That's gonna be pretty good.
Ooh.
yeah, Tiff does a fucking pineapple ham. Holy shit.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm doing.
Holy shit. Yeah. Is my audio better with the headset?
Yes.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Your
Okay.
video is much better quality too.
Hey, you can see how fucking weird I look.
Hell
Oh,
yeah.
we knew, dog. We knew.
I know. We've seen you in
Growers.
person, bro. Somehow it's worse.
So I say we dive right into um, why it's important for people to socialize, right, and get that get that connection, even when you feel like you don't want to. Because like right now, I have anxiety about tomorrow, right, and have
Mhm.
like all the people that's coming over, right. But like the from like whatever little research reading I dug up the last couple days, right, like we need that social contact for our mental health, right? For our well being.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There was a study that they did that's saying like just a handshake or a high five like releases serotonin, which
that's
as we
real.
know helps battle depression, right? Makes you feel better, right? So like even if you don't want to go to the big families event, like go to your church, right? Or something like that. Say you don't have family, right? Go down and volunteer at the mission and serve food, and
Mhm.
then, think about, those folks and be of service to them, right?
Yeah.
And, engage with them and shake their hands and, get your serotonin that way. Is it serotonin? Am I using the right one?
Well, serotonin is one of them, but it's oxytocin. I believe it's
Okay,
oxytocin that's
it
actually
is.
released
Yeah.
when you do touch and stuff. Um, but so yeah, it's actually you bring up a good point there. It's so in America, I don't remember where I heard this. I believe it was I was listening to a lecture because I'm a nerd, so I listen to lectures for fun.
Right.
But they were talking about people who work on their depression and stuff. Other countries' mental mindset when dealing with like your own sadness is actually encouraged to go help people.
Yeah,
It's in America where it's like in America when you're sad and depressed, it's encouraged to go away and find yourself, right?
that's
And internalize and become part of your own, but work on yourself. And it becomes very selfish in that regards.
so there's a lot of programs out there, a lot of churches, a lot of um, religions like actually preach, to go be of service, right? Because of that, right? It gets you out of self, and you're helping somebody else.
Mhm.
You can kind
I
of
think
forget about your shit.
I think it has a lot to do with helping people too. Like the fact that you're helping and having a purpose or feeling like you're filling a need in a community. Because we're community based beings, right? Like we're designed to be in social groups. Like it's funny. I actually think like it's counterintuitive to isolate yourself, especially when you're depressed, which seems to be the default response for some reason, even though the fix is to actually be around more people.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's so
Yeah,
confusing.
it's hard because like, it might fix one problem, but does it create another problem for people that have anxiety? You know, what about like, people that have social anxiety? Like for me, like going to work a serving position at the mission sounds horrifying. Just, because it's so many people that you're like shaking hands with. And on one hand, like it's awesome, like, to go be service to do a service for your community. Our mission is literally what, a mile, 2 miles from my house. Um, so I can see the benefit in that for sure. And on the other hand, like that anxiety, I mean, how do you guys deal with the the anxiety side of it.
I don't.
So,
No, I'm kidding.
so,
I don't.
so, so first off, Kevin, it might be different for me because I've actually went and got turkeys. I've received turkeys at the mission, right?
Uh-huh.
So it's different for me, right? Like I've been there.
You've
So it's
received the help from the other end.
Yeah.
right. So it's a little bit different. It's a little bit different for me. But I challenge you this year, whether it be Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, go find a group that you don't know, right? Like go to the mission or go to the Alano Club or something, right? And donate to them and serve food, right? Like serving food to somebody is like the most humbling experience you can ever experience.
I wanna do that, actually. I honestly have no idea how to go about finding it, though.
So I've got I part of the business is I ship stuff twice a week. And I was going into the post office last week, and there was a couple people, and they were sitting outside, and it was like, you kind of like you see them, they got their clipboards, you're like trying to avoid them because you don't want to talk with them, and they were like, I'm being truthful, it's honest, right?
No,
I
I
don't
do the
Um,
same
know.
thing.
so
Well,
it,
don't show no.
so I go in and I come back out, and it's a guy and a girl, and there's two little areas that you can walk out of the post office, and they're covering both doors. So I'm like,
Bastard.
oh, you guys, okay, well, I'll talk with you. And what they do is they collect food, they collect clothes that you don't wear, and if you're a husky guy like myself, like I got a bunch of stuff that I don't wear anymore. And then for every holiday, they have like 4 or 5 different little areas that they just serve soup at, and they serve food and give away canned foods and stuff like that. So if you're interested, oh, you're not here. Yeah,
I'm hours away.
yeah, yeah, that's right.
But
Well,
even then, what do I look up finding it locally, though?
The
I would
mission.
honestly the mission. Yeah, I would
What's
just
the
say the
mission?
mission.
What is the mission?
It's there's two different things for the mission. One of them is it's basically a homeless shelter, right?
Oh,
And the other part of the mission is it's a drug rehabilitation program, right?
okay.
And either one of those is amazing to serve. To be, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually think there might be I know there's a rehab down the street on the lake here where I'm at, so
We've
I don't
got
know.
we've got a few. We've got the Good News Rescue Mission here in town. And
Yeah,
then we also have a is it the battered women's shelter or
it's
something? That
one safe place.
one safe place, okay.
Yep.
Which is for women escaping like domestic violence issues. And then we have an Alano Club up here, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So we've got a
State Street.
few. We've got a few. I'm sure there's a ton of charities and stuff in this community, but those are a few that I know of.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And then the Alano Club actually puts on a Christmas dinner, which is awesome. And that's something for like if you were thinking about giving that a go, Ham, like it's they don't you're not going to be sitting there bumping elbows with a bunch of people. Like you could be like, hey, I want to sign up for the potato peeling, right? Or I want to sign up for cutting meat, or whatever the case may be. But it's really, it's like what Chris is saying. It's one of those things where I kind of avoided it for years, and then like I kind of got back into a corner, and I was like, oh, I'll give it a shot. And it's not just so much humbling. You it's just something to feel proud of, right? And you look up and you can see that you're serving people, and a lot of the people that you're serving, man, they're there just because it's a holiday party. And then there's
Mhm.
a lot of people that go to those functions that are there because they need to eat. And when you get to serve them some food, and it's way awesome. And usually anything that's put on by the Alano Club, um, I'd say about 75% of the people that go to those functions are incredible human beings. So you could like you'll s- I'm honest, dude. I'm not going to say 100%. Um, but you'll see the business owner, and then you'll see the guy that's struggling that just got kicked out of his house or doesn't have any food, and they're sitting there and they're both talking and they're conversing with each other like they're equals, and that shit's awesome. That is
That's
really cool to see. Yeah.
We'll pull these organizations. We'll plug them in the description, just so if anyone's curious.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah, we'll throw
Link
them
in
there.
bio.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, links in the description, guys. Check it out. Yeah, I'm gonna volunteer for something this year for Christmas. I'm gonna be by myself. So my ex has got my kid. My family's on the East Coast. I'm not gonna fly home, so I'm gonna do something volunteer wise here around here.
That's a good idea for you, dude.
Yeah, I figure I don't want to sit at home by myself. And then my girlfriend's amazing, but I'm not ready to kind of intervene with her family. Like I'm not ready to meet her parents yet. So
That's fair.
That's a
I'm moving
perfect
on.
example though, because there's a lot of people I'm sure that this will connect with as far as like not that you necessarily don't have a family, like active duty guys. You guys don't sit in your barracks room on Christmas night
Yeah, don't
and
be
just
waste of space.
drink and do nothing. Like
What do you mean?
there's what do you mean? What do I mean?
My holiday
that.
ritual.
Go to that mandatory fun event, dude. Go do something. Go to that Denny's that's open where there's 6 other people and just get out of your room. Get out
Hey,
of your what?
Kevin, what are you doing on December 25th?
I'm gonna be at my house with my family.
Wrong. You got duty.
Oh, oh
Night
man.
watch.
Is it barracks duty?
Yes.
Oh,
Oh, that was
sick.
fun.
Fire. You got Firewatch, nerd.
There was, whoa, man, Firewatch one night. I walked up to one of the barracks. It was actually my barracks that I was in. Oh no, it was the squad leaders at the time. I just getting into it. And they had, I can't remember what they called it. They called it like the octopus or something. But they had a 3-story beer bong. Oh, actually, it wasn't. No, it wasn't the
Helga.
unit. It wasn't our unit. It was the other one
Helga.
before that. I didn't see Helga, but
Oh, bullshit.
they were drinking. It was like 4 people at the bottom drinking, and it was 3. It was all the way up to the 3rd floor. I think they put like a 12-pack in it. It's fucking nuts.
I have a picture of Helga on my Facebook somewhere.
That's awesome.
Of course you do.
If I did meet Helga, I don't remember.
Right?
It's a valid statement.
Is Helga a beer bong? Is that what we're talking about here?
It's Helga is a 3-story, 8-man beer bong.
8 man?
Yeah, it held like 230 racks or some shit like that. And
You had to have a pipe.
And then they'd dump like whiskey on top of you.
Oh.
It had to have a pilot car and a fucking low boy to get it in there. Like, fuck.
They just hooked it. It was just a keg, and they ran the hose down the 2nd story.
Yeah. You guys heard about stealing power? Wait till you steal liquor. No.
Right?
Happy holidays!
Hoorah!
Happy holidays.
Yeah, there's
So
I was actually listening to a TED Talk. There's a phenomenal TED Talk. It's pretty old now. But they were doing a study on community, and it was one of the most prominent things you could do for mental health was being in a community. I don't have to share. I wanted to listen to it before we had this episode, but I didn't even think about it. I forgot it. Wrote a note down, forgot about it. But I'll post it in the description as well. It's just a phenomenal, it's like a little 20-minute TED Talk. They talk about studying people in community and how they were doing a long-term study of people who declared their life as fulfilling and valuable. And it was all the member, it was done over, I think, a 30-year span. And
Well, that's cool.
The people who determined or declared that they had good lives and actually were physically healthier were people who were heavily involved with family and communities.
I can see that.
It had a physical response as well as it had a mental response, and people lived higher quality lives from it. Now, from somebody who isolated himself, right? So I feel like an old warrior. I feel like a scene out of a movie where the old warrior escapes to the mountain to go find himself, and he returns 2 years later, right? And I'm in Copperopolis, this tiny little town. I'm on top of a hill by myself. My nearest neighbor is like 5 minutes away. There's 2 neighbors on the whole road.
Sounds magical.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Sounds great.
It's absolutely gorgeous, and I love it. And I actually would love to live here year round, but I was like, I'm also a social person. I'm a very extroverted person. So like I need to socialize. So sometimes like I have to go drive down to the coffee shop, but I'm in a small town. So there's like 4 people there. It's like a waste of time, but sometimes it's the only socializing I get. And I'm just like, damn, I need to reincorporate into society. Start
Yeah,
socializing.
that sounds tough, dude. That would be extremely difficult in a small town.
When I was single, it was being promiscuous allowed me to increase my social life, right? And so I was out dating anyone who would give me time. But now I'm in a relationship, so it's good. It's squared away.
So my social life sucks.
It's actually doing really good.
So what do you guys what's your guys' definition of community? What do you, because I feel like I have different communities for different compartments in my life.
That's actually a really good point.
So like I have a community at work. I've got a group of guys at work that I talk to pretty regularly, and then I have a family community, which is, you know, my actual relatives. But then I also have a community that I would put, like a community compartment that I put you guys in, that makes up of a lot of people that I would consider that I'm vulnerable with, that I may not necessarily talk to every day. And then of course you have your actual community, which I have a good relationship with pretty much all my neighbors too, which is, you know, I think by definition your community is the people around you.
Mhm.
So so what are your guys's what's your definition of community? Do you have multiple compartmentalized communities? Do you have one big group, or how do you guys kind of look at that? How do you break that down?
I got several. I'm like you, man. I got several different groups, right? And God forbid he ever makes them.
I feel you
It
there.
gets weird. It gets weird, dude.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely have, you know, separate. I have like a professional community, right? And then I have like my hooliganry, right? And then I got my boys, right?
Okay.
Like those are my different communities. I used to be part of another community, um, like really deep and heavy. I'm still kind of part of that community, but I've kind of backed off it a little bit. And like, which is funny because that's the community that's helped me the most and got me where I am today. But you know, I digress.
Yeah. I actually never considered putting my friends in the definition of community. When I think community, my definition automatically goes to people with shared interests who have an in topic like an interesting a topic of interest they share amongst them. And I automatically don't think of like family and friends as community, though it is defined as community, right?
Well,
So
I think that's why I was asking, because
yeah,
when I hear the word community, I immediately think of like my neighborhood. You know what I mean?
hobbies.
But I don't like
Motorcycles.
I don't well, motorcycles, but I don't know very many people in my neighborhood. Like I know my neighbors,
Mhm.
and I have a couple friends that live in the neighborhood, but you know, like back in the day, back when, you know, our grandfathers were having these conversations, like they were having block parties and stuff. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's interesting to see. I think technology, that's probably technology driven a little bit. You know, like here we are, four people, common interests. You know, three of us live in the same town, and one of us lives five and a half, 6 hours from where we are, but we're
Yeah.
still able to meet and have these conversations and stuff.
Right. Yeah, it's hard.
Today's youth ruined community. I'm gonna say it.
Well,
This new
society's changing
generation.
now. It's technology. But
I'm
also
Yeah.
well, so here's the thing. So I moved from New Hampshire. I joined the Marine Corps, travel, been around the country, and then I finished off and landed in California in the end. And I've been here since 2008 for the most part. I did a couple of years in Georgia, but came back. And community's different depending on where you are located in the
That's
country.
true.
Not even technology so per se, right? Like when I first moved into this town, Foster City in California in the peninsula, I remember walking out of my apartment on my way to work one day, and I saw one of the neighbors, and I was like, "Hey, we share a wall. You know, I've heard you and your partner in intimate settings. Like, hey, greetings, neighbor." And they're just like, I didn't actually say that. I just said greetings, neighbor, and like, hey, let's talk. And they just looked at me and was like, didn't even say a word, just walked away. And I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, but that's today's society, right? Um, and it's kind of also a thing of like wherever you're at, right? So like the Reading is like a big city to me, right? I grew up in a town. Grew up in a town that had one stop sign, and like up there, community is community, right? Because it's such a smaller little mountain town that everybody knows everybody. It was one of those things that I could ride down to. There was the grocery store, the tackle store, the movie rental place, and the post office was one building, and it was called the Plug and Jug, right? And so those it was the kind of thing where you could ride on the bicycle with a note, and you could pick up an 18 pack of Budweiser and a carton of Camels for your pops, and then get everything, and then go home. And then down here, I feel like it's kind of like what Chris is saying. There's or Chris and Ham. It's everything is so there's so many different like little categories of community. So for me, I'm kind of I'll just be honest, right? I'm kind of a recluse anymore nowadays. And so I've got my boys and the same, thing that Chris was talking about, that he's kind of halfway there, kind of halfway not. And that's the same reason why I got to where I'm at. But I also got blessed, man. I own a retail business and my customers are the shit. Right.
Yeah.
So I have my little community there, and it's great. Right. Like I got a buddy, this guy named Josh. He's one of my customers, and once a week he'll bring me uh, farm fresh sausage and a bunch of eggs, right? And then I've got another gal. Her name's Kim, and she bakes me goodies all the time. And so it's kind of cool. I have my own little community there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really awesome. It's cool.
I grew up on the East Coast, so I'm used to people who just talk to anyone and everyone. Right, growing up, we would leave for the weekend, we would leave our front door open. Like we didn't have to worry about any of that. So these were the kind of neighborhoods we grew up in. But everyone was social, everyone would talk to anyone. You'd get in a conversation with the randomest people, and it'd be like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And it actually happened this last week. I was on the phone and I was walking into TJ Maxx, and this old guy was just standing there, and we made eye contact, and he looks at me and he just like starts going, just went right into a conversation. And I'm like, I haven't randomly talked to somebody in like 3 years. Like I've been in California, nobody just randomly talks. Nobody has random conversations. Everyone always tells me I'm weird because I start conversations with random people.
I
And
do the same shit.
it was phenomenal though. It was a great conversation. It was actually kind of funny because he was actually talking about being distraught and bothered because a friend that he helped out took advantage of him, and he was dealing like he just needed the vent. He just needed to get it out. And it was kind of hilarious because I'm like, dude, you have no idea. I'm like, 2 weeks ago, I just started a podcast about talking about all this stuff.
That's cool.
So how do you respond like when that happens, right? So like I've had I've gotten phone calls, right, and talked to people who are going like actively going through depression, right? And I am not like I don't truly know how to respond, right? So like
Mhm.
how would you respond to like say a friend or a brother, whatever, like, hey man, like I'm depressed, I'm going through it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, so for me, my old method. So here's the problem. My ignorance back in the day when I didn't understand mental health issues the way I do now. My ignorance was always like, "Hey, dude, quit being a bitch," or like, "Hey," well, I'd always try to find a fix for their problem, right? They would be start venting and they'd share all their problems. They'd get pretty deep, and then like I would just say like, "Hey, if you did this or did that, you'd fix all your problems." But the problem is now that I know what I'm doing, or now that I understand it more and I've been on the other end, that was the worst way to ever respond to any of it. Because it would negate the way they felt, right? You're coming to them like it's a solvable problem, and they're coming to you like it's a world-ending problem, right? A simple conversation is not going to fix that, especially since most of the time those problems are usually internalized so much to the point where the only person who can fix them is them.
Yeah.
Some sometimes too, right? Like especially with depression, like it's a chemical thing, right? So like there's no really truly no fixing that, right? Like, for someone with clinical depression, right? Like there's medication, right? But there's no, like you said, like all I can do is emphasize, right? Is that the right word? Emphasize?
Empathize,
Empath-
Empathize.
Emphasize, but like Mike Tyson said it.
yeah, there you go. Like
That's good. I like
that's
that.
that's all I know how to do is try to relate, right? And understand what it is that they're going through and just kind of be that soundboard, right? Like
Mhm.
just listen, right? Because I'm not a doctor, right? I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Like all I can do is listen. And, if I can see that you're making bad life decisions, I can tell you like, hey man, maybe the answer isn't in the bottom of that Jameson bottle, right? Like, but I don't really truly know how to respond to that. And it makes me feel good that people can do that with me, but it doesn't make me feel good that I don't have the tools to make them feel better. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's part of the problem. But
So
I
I
feel like
think it's
this
one of
is
those things. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I feel like this is one of those situations where it would be nice to have like a doctor. You know what I mean? To bring on to talk to. Because like same thing with you, like I catch myself like post conversation when somebody's coming to me and like just venting like, hey, I'm having a hard time at home, having a hard time at my job, whatever it is. I feel like I like try to relate to those situations. I feel like I try to relate to those situations, but by the end of the conversation, I feel like I'm just talking about my own problems. And then I'm like cycling back through that conversation in my head and I'm like, this guy just came to me because he's having problems and then I just unloaded all my problems on him. So I don't know what the right way to like I don't know. I'm going to check in with my psychologist next time I meet with him and ask him.
So
That's actually
there's for me it's gonna depend on what the situation is, right? And this is all stuff that I'm learning in school because I'm in school to be a psychologist. And
Are you really?
I
yeah,
didn't know that.
yep.
We got to talk because I actually want to get a psychology degree just for fun. I love the subject matter. I
Listen,
read the
you would
material, I dive into the articles.
your brain is like because it's the one of the most fascinating things for me on the planet is to figure out why certain people do the things that they do, right? And it's tough, right, when you're dealing with some people and like so what I've learned to do for myself that kind of works out for me is because I'm a fixer, right? I think a lot of men
Mhm.
are. And so if somebody comes to me and they're like, hey man, I'm having a hard time, I'll go, hang on, now, do you want me to try to help you figure out a solution for this? Do you want me to just listen? Like, what are we doing here? Because I'm good for whatever. Like, I'm
You
open.
actually asked them?
But yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
And then there's, a lot of times I've got, friends that they're dealing with the same shit they've been dealing with for years, and they just need a sounding board. And
Mhm.
I learned that, and that's been really, really beneficial for me because sometimes they just need an ear.
Yeah.
And then there's other times too where I can be like, man, I don't I don't know how to handle that, but I think I know somebody that does, right? And then I'll try to put them in touch with somebody that can help. And but it's like one of the biggest things that I'm finding out with today is like a lot of stuff with a lot of certain people, and I'm not saying that it's going to be like this for everybody. But a lot of stuff is like deep seated stuff when they're dealing with depression that happened from childhood, right? And when they're in their childhood, they learned how to take care of themselves or survive a certain aspect, and they've carried that all the way into their life today, and they can't even recognize that, right? So it's almost impossible unless you know somebody really really well, and like you know their life story and you know how they grew up, where you can really be of any kind of help. But one of the other things too is that when somebody's going through depression, it's really, really easy. I call it looking through one lens, right? They kind of look at it through their aspect and the way that they're taking it, and they're not being open to maybe it's something else. Maybe they didn't mean what they said. Maybe that's not even happening. But because there's when you're depressed or you're dealing with depression and anxiety, you can only look through one lens a lot of the time. And so another really good thing to do is try to look at what they're saying, dissect what they're saying, and then see if there's maybe a different lens for them to look through, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
I always ask why. Like, why do they have that perspective? Like, where's that perspective coming from? Like, and this is like one of those things where it's like, I'm not a psychologist, so like that can only go so deep with it. But at the same time, I'm like, why? I'm like, is that a environmental behavior? Is that a learned behavior? Is that a trauma response behavior? And I try to
All of it.
understand their reasoning behind what they're doing. And then that's the way I also address my own problems.
Yeah. Yeah, you should
So
dive into sorry, Chris. Dive into that, man. Get into the book, dude. It'd blow your mind. It's fascinating.
Oh,
Sorry, Chris.
so so on that topic, right? How say you're at your Thanksgiving party,
Mhm.
right? And you see your cousin or brother, friend, whatever, and you see that they're struggling with something, right? Whether it be anxiety or depression or, whatever.
Mhm.
How would you approach them and talk to them?
Well, that's hard. So, before I share my opinion on that, you said empathize earlier, and I wanted to ask you, when you empathize with people, how do you do that? Do you share with them experiences you've had? Like, do you take up half the story time with your stories to show them that you relate to their story? Or do you just trying to make their emotion feel accepted?
So I do both, right?
Mhm.
Situation dictates, right? If I know the person really well, um, then I'll share my experience with them. If
Mhm.
I don't know them very well, then I'll just, put myself in their shoes and I'll put myself in their shoes and just kind of listen to them and try to, see where they're coming from and let them know that they are heard, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
And
that's good.
that either their feelings are valid or they're invalid, right? Because like a lot of times, someone can come to you with some crazy shit and you're like, yeah, bro, like that ain't it. You know what I'm saying? Like this is what you're missing, whether they want that advice or not. Like
Well, that's hard
some
though, because you can't well, so that's a hard part though, is invalidating somebody else's feelings, whether they're feeling like they're feeling it, right? Whether it's right or wrong, they're feeling it.
right, but sometimes
Mhm.
I'll speak for me, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I need, and Kevin's done this for me actually, right? I need someone to be like, bro, stop. Like
Yeah.
maybe if you were to look at it like this, and Kevin's not that tactful, but he's working
Mhm.
on it. Like, quit being
You
an
don't want to put
asshole,
crosses
right?
there.
Right? Like, quit being an asshole. Maybe you should go and pick up the dog poop in the backyard for your wife, right? Maybe you should do the dishes, right? Maybe you should, you know, be of service more to your family and your wife, right? Like sometimes I need people in my life that do that because I can feel like I'm wrong. I can feel like I've been done wrong, right? Like
Mhm.
that doesn't make it right. And sometimes I need a friend or a family member to be like, no, bro, like you you're wrong. Like this is the way you need to be looking at things. So yeah, you're right. Like that's hard to do, right? Because
Yeah.
feelings are valid. But sometimes people need that honesty, right?
Yeah. the reshaping and the perspective, right?
Looking
Yeah.
at it through a different lens.
I'd like
Yeah.
to say too, like, that's very much a situation dictates. If you don't think that the person you're talking to responds well to that, don't do it. I've known Chris and I have known each other for like 6 years now. We've known each other long enough and have developed a really close relationship where I feel comfortable telling him like, "Hey, you're just being dumb right now." And that's a two-way street because I'll vent to him sometimes and he'll do the same thing for me. We definitely have a relationship where like we can keep each other in check and we can be
Mhm.
honest with each other about that kind of stuff. But on the flip side, like I'm not going to do that to somebody I just met, in a truck stop or that, honestly, like Lucas or like John, we don't have a close enough relationship where I feel like if you called me to vent to me, I would just be like, "Hey, you're being stupid." Even if I thought you were being stupid, like our relationships just aren't close enough yet to where like I can differentiate between like, is this guy like, is he going through something right now and he just needs me to listen, or is he looking for an answer?
Mhm.
So I would just like, for the people that are listening to this, would definitely say like you need to be careful about when be appropriate. Don't don't listen to this podcast and then go home to your wife and be like, "Hey babe, the guys on false motivation said I should just tell you you're being dumb and it'll be fine." Because like I don't want to get that phone call or email.
Look at it differently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Definitely don't
just
do that to your wife.
Yeah.
100% do not
No.
do that to your partner, to your spouse.
Yeah.
If somebody
If
comes
you're
in and you don't know what to do, bring them to a psychiatrist,
yeah.
a
if
therapist.
Yep.
if your friend comes over at 11:30 at night and he's hi-ying and doing kicks, like don't tell him that he's being stupid.
I fucking did, actually. Like, sorry to break anonymity there. I'm like, what are you
You
doing,
did.
dude?
You did.
You
So
get
so
recorded.
He's like, I'm
so
feeling dangerous. Like,
John, I would go to Lucas's house. We lived in Red Bluff, and we weren't very far from each other. And I'd go to his house
Yeah.
almost every night, like just at 100%, like high on and like doing kick flips and shit, like and just at 100. And he's like, "Bro, just fucking stop."
he opened the door so hard on his truck that it closed. Like, and he didn't get out of it. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I can totally imagine that.
yeah. But getting back to like what I think Chris was saying, like you're at a family function, you might go to Thanksgiving and you might see your brother or your cousin or maybe even your uncle or your aunt and you see them and they're kind of you can see that they're kind of going into a funk. One of the things that I think is a really beneficial thing, and I think this is kind of that way for everybody, even if like you're out in a social setting and you see one of your friends and they're not doing too hot, I really don't think it's appropriate to walk up to them and be like, what's wrong with you, right? But if you I really think removing them from that situation, right? Like tapping them on the shoulder and being like, hey, let's go outside. Let's go outside.
Yeah.
And walk outside with them. I'm a hugger, right? Everybody in my life knows that. I just snatch everybody up. And so that's one of the things that I'll do is because like when we just started with this is that, high fives and hugs, it releases all those really good feelings, really good chemicals in your body. And so a good hug and then looking at them and being like, you want to talk about what's going on? And now you've taken them away from everybody, right? So nobody can hear them and now they can possibly talk about it, right? And it's one of the weirdest things, and I think everybody's gone through this and everybody's seen it at least once or twice. You're with the same family or the same group of people every single year, but some of them feel alone, right? They just don't feel like they're they're surrounded by people and don't feel. It's good to make them feel like they're not alone. Somebody has an eye on them, right? So for me it's always been tugging on their shirt and being like, "Hey, let's step outside for a second," right? And
Yeah.
getting them away from everybody.
That's good. Checking in on them.
Yeah.
I like to break the ice for people that I try to make people feel comfortable. I actually do this generally in most social situations when I'm meeting new people. I have to be careful with it, especially in professional settings, because the easy way of breaking the ice is making yourself feel or look like the ass, right? Like I'll share the embarrassing thing or I'll step up and be like, "Yeah, man, I don't know. I'm just dealing with," like if I feel like I can relate just through their body language, if I can feel like I have a sense of understanding what they're dealing with, I'll volunteer information that technically I should probably keep to myself, but I put it out there and I'm just like, "Hey, yeah, man, dude." People are like, "How you doing?" You know how you're supposed to get that generic response of, "Oh, yeah, I'm great." My response would be like, "No, man, I went through a huge depressive episode. It sucked. It was
Yeah.
horrible." And people are just like, "What the what?" I don't really want to answer. Yeah, have that conversation. But I tried to make an ass of myself to make people feel more comfortable to break the ice.
Planting seeds.
Yeah, that's the hard part, right? And then even then, that's hard too because then people, well, because the seed you plant, one, determines how people look at you in certain ways. Then you got people coming up to you like, "Hey, you need to talk. We need to we need to deal with anything. Like, what's going on?" But even then, that's hard. Mental health is just hard in general to fucking get people to express themselves.
Yeah.
Like even there's just that stigma.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think I think the stigma is the problem. The way we look at it is the problem. Like everybody, for whatever reason, we all have this idea that like you have to be okay, and like we've said the last two episodes, really, like it's okay to not be okay. And if you are surrounded by a group of people and you don't feel like you can talk to them about your feelings, find new people. Like
Mhm.
you should be surrounding yourself with people that can share their feelings with you and you can share their feelings with them in a manner in which you don't feel like you're going to be attacked,
Mhm.
Or at
and
least try with that
at
group
least
of
try.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because for me, man, I don't know how many times in my life that I think it was the last episode where I was talking about I have a magical magnifying mind.
Yeah.
And I will, before I go be vulnerable, I will compound so much shit of how it's not going to work out, and they're going to either think I'm a puss and that I'm not a real man and all this stuff, and then you go ahead and you do it, or somehow you get forced to, and you just realize that it's not that bad,
Mhm.
and some people are receptive. That doesn't mean that everybody's going to be right, and I agree with everybody here, and when it's like if you go do that jump of vulnerability, that leap of faith, and it gets thrown back in your face, you're around the wrong people,
Yeah.
and you need to find yourself some new ones.
So that the Marine Corps actually taught me a lot about the ability of being available, right? Or being vulnerable. Because I've met some of the hardest dick motherfuckers I've ever met in my life in the Marine Corps. And you start drinking with people and you start having conversations behind the scene. And like all you do is throw one statement out about like dealing with something, and you will be surprised with the hardest hitting mothers will just be like, "Oh, dude, yeah, dude, I went through this. I went through like right, Chris and I served together, right? So perfect example. Surprised how quick people are welcoming of your own vulnerability. Being vulnerable is more welcoming than most people realize because most people want to be vulnerable themselves.
Yeah,
They just feel they can't.
Well, a lot of us have, dealt with enough trauma that like being vulnerable is a really scary thing, you know? Because how many I'm sure everybody here can think of a situation where they were in a relationship, whether it was romantic or professional or whatever it may be, where they took an
yeah,
opportunity to be vulnerable and you felt worse after. So that's like it takes a little bit of courage, right? Like you definitely have to step out of your comfort zone, but it's important because if you're not vulnerable with people, like you're never going to develop that relationship. You'll always
Mhm.
be stuck in the I don't even know what you would call it, but the beginning of that relationship, the generic portion of that relationship.
Yeah, it's like you're stuck in a certain position in the social hierarchy.
Yeah.
Is that what I say it?
It made sense to me, dude.
Okay, good.
You said it confidently, and I
It
just went with
sounded good. It
Yeah.
sounded good.
That's
That's
another thing the
that's
Marine Corps taught me. If you don't know what you're talking about, say it confidently, and nobody will
yeah.
question
That's
it.
80% of the battle right there.
and nod your head, agree with your own self. You're like, yeah, fuck,
Yep,
dude, I'm
yep.
so good.
So freaking smart. But
Write
that's actually
that down.
yeah. Van Wilder, I can think of it every time. Write things down. But this is the whole point of us starting this thing, right? Is like we want to give people the idea that, like, hey, you know what? Talking about your shit ain't weird. You got to talk about it. You got to have that network, right? And if you don't want to, so here's another thing: if you're in a social group and you don't like, all right, I have people that I love talking to and chatting with, but I have no desire of getting emotional with them.
Yeah.
So, but I also have separate social groups for that exact reason, right? Like I have the people I can go get vulnerable with. So I think it's a matter of making sure that you have somebody. And that's also if you don't have anyone, sign up for a therapist, right? It's
Or if you have
Absolutely.
somebody, sign up for a therapist.
true.
Yeah. You shouldn't. I would caution people not to just pick one person in your life to dump all of that onto. Because that can be very overwhelming if
I mean,
I got
put your
two.
hands down.
I got two right here.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like
Stop telling me
for
about
nothing-
your ED, Chris. Damn it.
for nothing else, it's good to have more than one perspective on things, right? You know, the way that I vent to my wife, who I vent to often because she's awesome, is completely different than the way that I vent to Chris when I'm on the phone. You know what I mean? I can't vent to Chris when Chris is bugging me, so I vent to my wife. You know what I mean? So and you know that's I can vent to Ashley, and I can vent to Chris about the same exact thing in the same exact way, and I can get two completely different perspectives on it. And it's important to have those perspectives. And then I'll vent to my psychologist, and he'll be like, you should stop calling Chris and just talk to me because he gives bad advice.
Look, you can buy the new motorcycle, okay? It's okay, you can do it.
So it's not that it's wrong, it's just honest.
Yeah. So build that community of people that you can trust to be vulnerable with.
Yeah.
And
I mean, go ahead.
So going to I'm gonna jump on this therapy thing right real quick. Going to therapy doesn't mean you're broken, right? What it means is that you're taking steps towards having better mental health, right? It's like doing a tune up on your truck, right?
Yeah.
Like
Ooh.
you do a tune up on your truck before it breaks down, right? Like you do maintenance on your truck before it implodes on you, right? That's all therapy is. And if someone from your work or a friend or a family member tells you that you're broken because you're going to therapy, tell them to fuck off because they're wrong.
Well, it's most likely they need therapy.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. It's because they're trying to
Yeah.
put you down because somebody put them down.
You're bad look, dog. That's a bad look. That's a bad look. Yeah. Just having their
Toxic
card.
masculinity.
Right. I hate that.
But
Yes, I'm just like I like I said, and I was just open with it. I'm kind of a recluse when I'm outside of work, right? And the group of people that I have in my life that are close to me are all people that I can be vulnerable with, you know, and it's pretty damn beneficial. And like what we were all just talking about earlier is I'll talk with 2 or 3 different people about whatever my vulnerability is, and I will get 3 different ways to look at it, and sometimes all 3 ways are correct, right? And it's just getting it off the one track mind of myself, especially when I'm upset or I'm anxious or I'm dealing with the depression, because I don't know about you guys, it's really 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 hard for me to think positively about any kind of problem I'm in if I'm dealing with a depression. And So getting that, like, just to piggyback off what everybody else said, man, you get that core group of people in your life that you can be vulnerable with, and you're being vulnerable with them, right?
Mhm.
That's You're doing good.
I've found
And
that being vulnerable with people actually helps keep me in line, like, right, that magical magnifying mind, like, I used to do the same thing a lot, it was just always, like, I would go hours. I remember I'd go 4 hours and just sitting there processing, like, "Oh my god, I got 50 different scenarios this could
Yeah,
run into." But then, like, as soon as I have a 5-minute conversation, it's just like, "Oh, here's a cap. I can't take it above this because that sounds ridiculous." Like, I can't tell somebody that. Like a retard.
I've been there a
it's
lot, man.
and bringing this back full circle, if you are listening to this and you don't have anybody in your life, you don't have somebody who can pick up the phone or stop by their house or something like that, uh go volunteer to do something. You would be surprised.
yeah,
The best relationships in my life have come from the most inconspicuous places. We met at a mutual friend's house, or we met at church. All these
Mhm,
all these places that you can go volunteer for. One of your nonprofit organizations in your community, and you will meet so many people from so many different walks of life. I guarantee you'll find somebody there that you connect with. Go to church. Go to if you're struggling with an addiction, go to AA or NA or any of these. Even if you're not a religious person, a church is a great way to meet a lot of other people that aren't religious people that are struggling in life.
mhm.
So if you find yourself in a situation where, like, you need to be vulnerable with someone but you don't have anybody to be vulnerable with, that's a perfect opportunity for you to go meet somebody, go volunteer for something.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
and
Awesome.
Right. Hey, write that down.
write that down. And
Be of
and
service.
Be
now
of
here's
service.
another thing, right? Like, for me, and I feel pretty comfortable saying this for myself. I don't know about anybody else. But if all of those things sound daunting, right? Like, because I know now, like, volunteering is amazing, and it is such a beautiful way to get out of self. It's a beautiful way to get proud of yourself. Um, but I remember the first time somebody kind of offered that up to me, and I thought that was the dumbest shit ever. I'm like, no, I'm not going to go volunteer my time. I'd rather sit in my shit. Um, but if all of those are super, super bad and super daunting, um, you can drop me a Facebook message, right? Like,
Same.
I'd be happy to talk to you. Right? I'm
Mhm,
probably gonna listen to what you have to say and then probably recommend all the things that we just talked about. Um, but I feel like I'm a pretty safe place to kind of just go out on a limb and try this being vulnerable thing. I'm a very
mhm.
unjudgmental person. I've been in a lot of really dark places and worn a lot of different shoes, right?
Or hop
So
on or hop on one of our social medias, the false motivation social medias, and drop a
yeah,
post. You're probably not the only one dealing with something, right? Somebody could probably relate to you.
yeah,
So when I started dealing, I didn't accept that I had issues. Well, even then, when my marriage started failing, I wouldn't even accept that I had issues, right? And some people told me, like, "Hey, go talk to a therapist, see about this, go deal with that." And I'm like, or go share it with your friends. And I always felt like, I'm like, I don't. My friends are busy with their lives. I don't want to. And like, yeah, we can have that conversation in the right context, but I'm not going to show up to them and be like, "Hey, let's do this," right? Or, "Hey, let's talk about me for 2 hours and how I suck at life." But so I ended up like I sat through probably a good year or two of refusing to do anything about it because I didn't want to bother anyone else, or I felt like I could fix my own problems. I actually started in order to self reflect, I guess you could say. I started a little podcast on Spotify called Night Walk, and I just started venting. I just started sharing my perspectives and thoughts as I went, and I recorded like 30 something episodes. It not bad. I've had got some positive feedback, but I didn't share with anyone either. At first, like it sat there for like 2 years and just posted it. It was out in the world. I didn't do anything with it. I didn't tell anyone about it. Nobody had any idea I was doing it. Even my wife at the time had no idea I was doing it. I was doing it because I would, at the end of the day, after everyone went to sleep, I would go for a walk with the dogs before bed. And that's what I was doing it.
What's it called again?
Nice.
Night Watch?
Yeah, night walk.
Yeah, I want to give that a
Night
shot.
Walk.
Yeah,
Oh, cool.
I'll show the link. I'll put
Yeah.
the link in the description.
Link in Discord or whatever.
Yeah.
So for me, like what you were saying, right, was it, and this is, and I just got to be 100% honest with this, right? Mine was never so much, truthfully, and this is me. Truthfully, I would say I'm just not going to burden my friends. They got their own shit to deal with. What it really, really was for me was my ego. I could not let you know that I was going through some shit, right? I could not let you know that I was down and out, right? I couldn't let you know that I was in a dark place because primarily I'm a pretty bubbly, positive dude. And I would mask it with me saying, like, I'm not going to, they got their own shit going on, man. I'll be all right. Everything, it's fine. I'll figure it out. That was my favorite thing. I'll figure it out. We're good. And, so I kind of wanted to put that out there. If there's anybody that's listening to this podcast that has been, that may have said that a few different times of like, oh, I'm just not going to burden anybody, or they're busy, and it's really, and it deep down inside, it's just your ego. You're probably tuning into the right podcast.
The problem is you don't know it's your ego.
I did.
You knew it at the time. I didn't know it was my
100%.
ego. I had no idea. I just kept telling myself that I'm like, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I 100% did. It was, and like, there was times, man, where I was so desperate for help, but my ego was so damn fragile that I would really cut my face off to spite my nose, and my nose being my ego, right?
Yeah.
Like it was horrendous, and to be fair, man, there's still times like today that I deal with the same stuff. Do I deal with it as much? Not really. We're getting older. My give a shit's just kind of going out the window. But man, I mean, from day one, I knew it. And not necessarily when I knew that I was struggling. It was when I learned about what depression was, because I thought depression was for, people that lost somebody that they loved, or their whole life just came to an end, or, they just, their marriage crumbled. Right. And so when I learned that depression comes in all shapes and forms, and it's a pretty sneaky son of a bitch, and I knew that I was dealing with depression and I was dealing with anxiety issues. It was 100% my ego, and I knew it.
Going to the topic that we are mainly talking about, making a safe space for somebody to come talk to you, or your ability of approaching somebody else. Did anyone make you feel like you had a space you could go talk to and you just chose not to? Or did you just kind of convince yourself you didn't have a space to go talk to? Or does that make sense? I believe it makes sense.
Well, for me, and I know Chris has kind of touched on it a little bit. I've kind of sprinkled on it a little bit. I'm an ex-alcoholic and a drug addict, right? And so for me, it was, there was people that I knew that were willing to give me the space, but I was unwilling to do so because I didn't want people in my life to think that he's struggling, he might go back out, right? And Chris remembers this about 11 years ago, 10 years ago. Me being just like that took me right back out. And by back out, I mean, I started drinking and using again. And it was horrible.
What did they do to make you feel like you had a space to go talk, like you were free to share?
Well, like, first off, my dad, right? So my dad, he was born in the 40s. and grew up in the mountains, so feelings are not a thing, right? And he started getting to a point where he was like, he would come to me and he'd like give me a hug and tell me that he loved me, and be like, "Is something bothering you, kid? Like we could talk about something." And so that was like my whole life. That's what I kind of wanted from my dad, right? And then he was giving it to me, and I couldn't. My ego and my fear wouldn't allow me to do that with my dad. I knew that with my brother, my oldest brother. He's such a genuine, caring, and compassionate human being. He'll tell you he's an asshole, and he's kind of true, but like deep down inside, he's a compassionate man. And he would bring the same things up to me, right? And it just, I couldn't allow myself to tell them that I was struggling because I didn't want them in fear, that I was going to be on Most Wanted again, and there was going to be bad stuff happening again. And so I couldn't do that. And mind you, there's also been in my life, there's been women in my life that have been like, "Hey, it's okay. You can talk to me about it. You can talk to me about it." And then the moment they get upset, they throw it in your face. And you're like, now I don't ever feel safe again. Right. And
Mhm.
especially for men in general, but there's men that kind of grew up the way that I did. Right. Like I got in trouble for having emotions. The only emotion that I was allowed to have was like anger and drive and determination and grit. And, but I wasn't allowed to be emotional. And so you kind of get to this point, you live your whole life, and I did a lot of bad shit in my earlier days to where you couldn't have emotions and the I guess the surroundings that I was in, right? And because you couldn't be weak. And
Mhm.
so you go through all those, you live your whole life doing that, and then you've got people that are telling you that you can be vulnerable with them and you're too afraid to do so, and then you might, and this could be a lot of other people's story, you find that one woman that's like, "Why don't you ever talk to me about your things? Why don't you ever talk to me about the stuff that you're going through?" And then you do so, and it backfires on you. But like the wonderful thing about that, and like mind you, it is so painful and it's horrible while it's happening. But the thing about that is like, well, we've talked about it like 3 or 4 times. If there's somebody in your life that that punishes you for being vulnerable, they're not, you can't keep them around. And today they're not around.
Mhm.
And but for me, yeah, it was my dad, my brother. I had an uncle, my uncle was like that. And I was so afraid and I was so ego and fear driven to let them know that I was struggling. I just wouldn't do it. And I mean, I ended up drinking over it, and I don't drink well, and I don't use substances well. I get really
Mhm.
mean. I get really, so, it was, it was horrible, and stuff like that will happen for people. Like if people are in recovery and they can't open up, and it's just, every single one of them has a temporary stamp on them for when they go back out if they can't open up and be vulnerable.
Mhm.
And it's just, you got to find the people that you can do that with. And like you have to actively go out and try to find them.
Yeah, obviously, this is Monday day quarterbacking and reflecting back, so obviously it won't have as much value as if you were in the moment. But is there anything anyone could have said to you that may have actually gotten you to let that ego down enough to open up?
Probably, but I think that's, for me, it's kind of like, how could somebody know that they could say that?
Yeah.
But if somebody were to be like, "Dude, you know that I got faith in you. I know you're going to be okay. Just what's going on?" If that was to have been said, I probably would have felt a shit ton more safer. But that's not their fault, and for not being able to read my mind. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Um,
But having that information now, sharing that now might help somebody else reflect that
yeah,
conversation with somebody else, right?
absolutely. That's, yeah, perfect. Um, if I just had some like affirmation, like somebody was to be like, "Dude, I know you're good, man. It's just, talk to me. I can see that something's up with you." Like that probably would have been pretty beneficial for me. And I don't want to say, because I feel, the fear that I have is that I don't want to sound like, because they didn't ask me that, I ended up ruining my life for a while.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that's like affirmations. right? And that could go for all of us, right? Like you see somebody going through it that might be in the same kind of walk, and you're being like, "Hey, dude, like, I know you're good. You're just going through some shit, dude. Like, you want to talk about it?" You know, and that might make somebody feel safe enough to where they can be vulnerable.
Mhm.
So
Are we creating a safe space? Sort of.
don't say that.
I'm hoping so.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Sick. Okay.
I absolutely love the fact that we're not using the words safe space, triggered, all those coined terms that we as men love to hate. We're not saying those words, but that's exactly what the fuck we're talking about, gentlemen.
Yeah.
I love
Well,
I love it.
well, that,
You
I
said the
think
quiet
I
part
think
out
it's
loud.
because of the way it came into the media is why it's like, oh, oh God. It's another person complaining about something that's just so absurd that it shouldn't be a public issue.
Right.
Like
But
the old gym post, I'm fighting my demons. Shut up, Kyle. like,
Take another scoop of pre-workout.
yeah.
So with all that being said, I kind of want to circle back to the beginning, like how I know how I handle, anxiety, right? Especially at like the social stuff that's coming up, Christmas and Thanksgiving and all that, right? But how do you guys handle your anxiety?
before we dive into that response, let's define what anxiety is in our regards, in our opinions, right? Because I feel like anxiety can shift according to some people's definitions,
Right.
and maybe
So
defining might help a little.
yeah, so for me, it's like it's not like my heart's pounding out of my chest and I'm sweating bullets, right? And I'm
Mhm.
shaky. For me, it's just like the easy agitation, right? Like
Yeah.
it feels like to me it feels like added pressure, right? Like there's
Mm.
just huge amount of pressure on me. Whether it's like a timeline or like the turkey's not cooking fast enough, or I haven't seen these people in 2 years, and I might have done them wrong. Like now I got to face them. It's just like I'm easily agitated, right? I'm short tempered. I can't truly focus on what it is that I have to do. Like everything just feels overwhelming,
Mhm.
right? And like for me, like that's most of the time that's what my anxiety looks like, and it generally causes me just to shut down and like I want to hide, right? I want to go in the garage. I want to go, lay on my bed and look at my phone, right? Like that's what it makes me feel like want to do, right? I'm
Oh,
not.
like
It's not the tip.
escaping? Like you wanna
Yeah,
escape when you have it? Okay.
yeah. That's what it. For me, that's what it looks like. It's not the typical, heart pounding out of the chest and people's dilated and I'm sweating like a pig and fidgety eyes. It's not that type of anxiety.
Mhm.
So for me, that's the type of anxiety that I get is the heart beating out of your chest, sweaty, like very uncomfortable. And it's hard. It like I I'm medicated. And I
Mhm.
know that's not everybody's options because not everybody has healthcare or people struggle
Mhm.
with addiction and they can't take medication or it throws their steps off. So but I will make myself sparse when I start getting to that point. I will go out in the garage or go to the bedroom and dick around on my phone for a minute or whatever, just to bring that meter back down, and then come back for seconds.
Are you able to bring it down? I personally like, when I get into an anxious cycle, like, I feel like it's a cycle, right? Like, once it turns on until it runs a course or I find a way to really make, like, some sort of physiology physio yeah, physiology change, like, physical change of some sort, it just I can't get away from it. I can't escape it. and no matter what it is, like, it's so, I'm divorce poor right now, right? So I have a lot of financial stress, and, like, I have my ex pressuring me because I'm not making child support payments. I'm barely getting by in certain ways. I'm trying to get back on my feet. I'm almost there, but the overwhelming like, it's I for me, it's like a tunnel vision and, like, a swelling in the back of the head that just gets to a point where it's like the world's gonna come down in on me, and I feel like I'm gonna go to fucking get the shit beat out of me or prison, or like I'm gonna get in so much trouble because I'm not performing at the level or quality that I'm supposed to. It's a super overwhelming, like, sense of tunnel vision. And it's just, to some days it's just like I just want to cry and I'm just like, ah, or I want to rage out and, like, be like, I can't function in all of this. I want to escape society and go live by myself in the woods.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's anxiety comes for me in like different levels. So like kind of speaking off like what you were just talking about, Jonathan, I have the gentleman that I leased the building from. So mind you, like I kind of like broke off from another company, started my own company. I didn't have a lot of money to do so, but I kind of was making it work. And so like if anybody's been in business, every single month feels like it's your last month, and so that's anxiety ridden right there. But I had a couple months ago where I had mailed in my check for my lease because there's 2 units that I have, and I was convinced that the old timer had cashed a check. And so I went about my life willy nilly ordering stuff for the shop and doing what I thought I needed to have. And I was kind of like really excited. I had, like 11 or $12,000 in the business account. And I was like, that's pretty cool. I can breathe. The transmission on my GMC goes out. And then the old timer calls me and he's like, hey, so about last month, it seemed to have lost your check. So transmissions anymore nowadays, cost more than organs do. And, um, and then I had 2 months of lease on units in downtown, right? So they're not cheap, and so all my money was gone, and I just that was purely anxiety ridden, and for me, the best bet that I had, and like mind you, I'm not going to sit there and tell you like as soon as that day happened, I was like quick to pick the phone up because I fucking wasn't, right? But over the next couple of few days, I talked to a couple different people about it, and and it was funny because it was just something that I knew that I needed to talk. I should just talk to somebody that's been in business, see what they think, see if they've been through the same shit, and lo and behold, they had, and then go to find out while I was having that conversation with somebody. And I mean, this isn't going to happen for everybody. It just so happened that I was blessed with this. I'm talking to a guy that built my website, and he was like, "Hey, so and so wants to partner with you." And I was like, "Oh, really?" And he's like, "Yeah, like they have they have money, they have funds. Call them."
Mhm.
And so like that was taken care of. But
Nice.
it was really good, dude. I was like, um, and then like I'm thinking now for the holidays, right? I kind of will feel in some instances like it's a forced thing that I just don't want to be part of, right? Like everybody's got, not everybody, but some people have where there's parts of the family that they're comfortable with and parts of the family that they love being around and then parts of the family that you're like,
Mhm.
and um for me so like I'll just be upfront and honest about it, right? Like I spend pretty much every Thanksgiving at my brother's house, and my brother's like, I love him very, very much, and I love being around him. I love being around his kids. But the family had all those kids when they were smaller. Um, they were just not fun to be around,
Mhm.
and so all of my kids they're well mannered, they're respectful, they're well behaved, and it just those kids weren't. And so every year around this time, I would just get this pit in my stomach, and it would make me irritable, like Chris was saying, where I'm like, I just don't want to go be around them, right? And so there was one Thanksgiving that I ended up taking a break from it, and that was kind of a building block for me too, because I always felt like I couldn't tell my family no.
Mhm.
Um, and then the next year, I was magical magnifying mining it, and I ended up going out to my brother's house, and it was just like that one threshold year, where like kids go from being like crazy and psychotic to all of a sudden like they're more well mannered and they're well
Mhm.
behaved. They've matured a little bit, and so then it was super pleasurable, right? Like it was a lot easier to be around. But for me, anxiety usually comes, and like I think everybody kind of deals with anxiety different. But for me, it's I'll look at a situation and I will think about 75 things of why it's going to be horrible and why it's going to be bad, and I'll just focus on them. And it usually, for me, it's if I just force myself to go and give it a go, I usually do a little better. I'm glad that I did that the next year after I took a break from my brother's house, because the kids are great.
Mhm.
They actually were like, you could talk with them and hold like a semi decent, mature conversation, which was cool. Um, but my anxiety usually comes right before I need to do something, and I don't want to do it. Right. So for me, it's
Kinda
just
get
forcing
interesting.
myself. Yeah.
So, so John, like you were saying, like something for you has to physically change for you to feel better, right? And like, so for me, a lot of the times, what I like to do is, I'm not retarded or nothing, but I like rocks.
I like the way they feeling shit.
I like the way they feel and shit. I got one in my pocket right now, found in the parking lot. Um, but no, carry something with you, like uh, something you can touch, right? Like
Mhm.
my son
Trigger
has like all
finger.
these. Yeah, my son has all these sensory stuff things for him, little toys, and
Mhm.
like I don't know how many times I've been in the car and like reached back and grabbed one and started playing with it,
Yeah.
right? And like there's shut up, Lucas. There's something there's like I know we're touching on to some like autism stuff like that, but like I'm telling just like when I feel overstimulated, right, by
Mhm.
sounds,
Yeah.
people, whatever,
Yeah,
like just
I get that way
you
sometimes
know
too.
yeah, grabbing a hold of something, like a pin cap or whatever, right, and just rubbing it or feeling it, right. Remember to breathe, take those deep breaths, right, and this is
Yeah.
all stuff
Breath
that
work.
like this is all so for me like in my job I'm put in situations that can feel very overwhelming in my job, right? Like the world's coming to an end to for some people, right? And you have to stand there and make sound decisions, right? And it can be overwhelming and cause an anxiety to rise. And like what I've learned to do is don't look at the problem in front of you, right? Like
Mhm.
because I can look at that problem, right? I can look at the flames, so to speak. Like I can look at the flames and be like, "Oh my god," right? And like, but if I take a step back and take those deep breaths and look at the bigger picture, right, and start piecing all of this together, why am I feeling this way? Like, who's going to be there? What am I going to do? And start coming up with a game plan. Like, right, have an ETA, estimate time of arrival, have a ETD, estimated time of departure, and have these plans. Right, like when I get there, I'm gonna seek this person out, or I'm gonna immediately go and be of service. Right, I'm gonna go and see. I'm gonna ask the host what needs to be done. What can I do to help? Set the table. Take the dogs for a walk. Vacuum, clean up, dust, whatever it is that you can do to help to get yourself
That's a good
out
idea.
of
Well,
out of your own head, right? Like,
are
yeah,
you
go ahead.
saying that as in like finding something to occupy yourself, or are you saying it in a way of like breaking it down to smaller sections that are handleable? You
I'm thinking it's
Smart,
occupy.
both. It's both, right? So
Mhm.
I'm when I'm going there. So like, I went to my father-in-law's. I don't want to get into a long dialogue, but I
Yeah.
went to my father-in-law's last Saturday, right? And like for some reason, it always gives me anxiety. I love my in-laws. Like they're great people, but it gives me anxiety, right? So like I get in the truck and I'm like, okay, like it takes us 2.5 hours to drive, right? Like I'm doing the driving. When I get there, we're gonna do the hellos and the hugs and the greets, and then I'm gonna pull a piece of candy out of their little candy dish. I'm gonna have some candy, and then I'm gonna start cooking. And then while I'm cooking the meat, I'm gonna start doing his wood. Right, I'm gonna start
I like that.
loading up his wood rack, and
That sounds
I
really
build
gay.
myself,
Sorry,
but
I
like
started
I'm
joking.
building, I but I'm building a plan, right, and I'm trying to stick to that plan, and that sits for some reason it sets me at ease. I'm like, okay, like now I know what I'm doing, right, and also in doing that when I'm there, because I get social anxiety, I'm keeping myself busy and I'm being of service, which,
Mhm.
you know, makes me feel great, makes them feel great, right? And it's just something that I found works for me and my anxiety. Does that make sense? Like,
Does it
That's gonna
relieve the anxiety and make it feel, or is it just kind of the anxiety still there, but makes it more handleable? Han Why is that word
it
so
makes
weird?
it handleable.
Handleable.
We're talking about hood and wood and handleable. What are we
Yeah.
doing here? No, it makes it palatable.
Okay.
You guys want to just stick with manageable because
Yeah,
that
that's right. That's the
makes
word I think I was
or
looking for.
palatable. Yeah.
Palatable. It makes it to where I'm not. Um, it makes it manageable, right?
Mhm,
Like Kevin said, it makes it to where I have a plan, and it's my plan, and it's a good plan, and no one needs to know that plan but me. But it helps. It just sets me at ease. Like the anxiety is still there, but now I have purpose. I have a purpose for being there,
mhm,
and that's another part of it too, right? Like that's another part of the service aspect is just
mhm,
having everybody. I feel like us as humans, like if you're just going to another Christmas party or you're going to another Thanksgiving dinner, right? Like that could be a drag. But if you're going there with the mindset that you're going to be of service and you're going to help somebody, now you have a purpose to be there. You have a reason to be there. And it kind of just drives that anxiety down. Now, when you get there and that anxiety's coming up, grab the rock, right? Talk to the host or talk to the host, and tell the host like, hey, I have a lot of anxiety going here, like, so if I step outside, like I'm okay. I'm just catching some fresh air or whatever. Go. I know, like I don't smoke weed, right? But like a lot of family members like go for a walk with their cousins, right?
mhm.
Like
Yeah.
that's the thing, right? The last thing I'm gonna suggest not to do is don't over drink to overcome your anxiety and your um what do you call that when you don't want to talk to people? Your antisocial
Yeah,
disorder, right?
social
Like
anxiety.
don't don't over drink to overcome that, right? Because like as the science has proven, alcohol actually increases the likelihood of depression in some folks. So don't do that. Drinking's bad. Go for a walk with your cousins to the store, right? Find a rock, put it in your pocket, remember to breathe, and be of service.
Well, I actually have used weed as a or as an anxiety medication, like self-medicating, right? Like when just anxiety was just too frequent, I needed to calm it down. It worked out for a while, but then there was a point where I actually realized that the weed was actually contributing more to the anxiety.
It
And it
works
was
till
like,
it doesn't, right?
yeah. And then at a certain point, it was just like, why am I even more anxious? Or like, why is the anxiety always coming back now? Like, I'm trying to get rid of it. What the hell's going on? And I came to the realization that it was because I smoked weed a bunch. And I think I'm now like a little over a month of not smoking any weed or anything like that. And it's
There
just
you
like,
go.
it's not because it's a habit, but it was just like, I need to take a break. I need to be more like functioning and trying to find a different way of facing my anxiety because I'll get my anxiety cycle. So for me, I have a massive anxiety when it comes to divorce paperwork.
Oh yeah.
I'm 2 years after my divorce and like It's so overwhelming trying to deal with paperwork when it comes to divorce because the marriage failure was such a devastating crush to me.
Let me ask
And
you this.
yeah.
When you there's a whole bunch of anxiety behind the paperwork, right? So
Mhm.
I'm assuming you push it off,
Oh,
right?
horribly.
What
It
happens
screwed me
when
a
you
couple times so far.
and I'm sure that that's true. What happens when you sit down and just do it?
That's the hard part. I don't know because sometimes, like, when I sit down and do it, like, I'll start doing it, I'll get 5 minutes into it, and then I get up and come up with something else that I had to do, and I, like, can't even think about it, and then it's, like, 3 weeks later, and it's like, "Fuck,
So
that paperwork's still there."
I'm I'm not a doctor,
Yeah.
right? But and you don't have to answer if you don't want.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have ADHD?
Oh, absolutely. And I have prescription medication for it, and I have practices and stuff, but it's the anxiety from doing the paperwork because I'll do any other paperwork. I have no problem doing paperwork. Like ADHD, like I have my methodology that I have found in the past that works for me functionally is having multiple things that have to happen. And then like whenever I switch gears, I do something that's of worth, right? I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, well, here's 5 projects that I get done. But the anxiety I get from divorce paperwork, it still just gives me the fucking heebie-jeebies. It's just so soul crushing. And the breaking it down thing that you were talking about, I actually think that's probably going to be the better method of doing it. Is just saying, hey, you know what? Today I'm going to print out the paperwork I have to file.
Yep.
Tomorrow I'll collect the paperwork that needs to be pulled together. Then I'll write the paper. Like, and that's kind of how it pieced together in the past. I don't think it was as organized as it was because it was more like, I have to get something done. I have to get it done. So I'd do a section and then go back.
Can I say
But
something?
yeah,
So I have ADD,
yeah,
and the one of the most crucial tools for me when I'm having to sit down and do shit, right? Because I will 110% make up shit that I need to do when I don't want to do something. Um, so one of the most crucial things that's ever helped me out is a timer, right? Because so for like, you're talking about your divorce paperwork and it looks like it's a poisonous snake, right? If for me, like when I have to do stuff, especially like when I'm filling out school paperwork and it's really not fun, um, I'll give myself a 20-minute timer where I am devoting 20 minutes is getting it done. After 20 minutes and that timer's out, I'm done, and then I can move on to something else. But I have to have a set agreement with myself, and that's the hard part, right? And
yeah,
the set agreement is like I'm going to give myself 20 minutes tonight, and I'm going to give myself 20 minutes tomorrow, or I'm going to give myself 20 minutes tonight on this, and then I'm going to take a 5 minute, 10 minute, 15-minute break, and then hit it for another 20 minutes. And it's because the wonderful thing about the timer is you look at it and you realize it's not infinite,
yeah,
and you're only held till that timer says zero. And then for me, I kind of like to fuck with myself. So if I decide like I'm gonna jump up and while that timer's going, I'll like make fun of myself to myself or something about it, and it usually just sits me right back down because it's I will look at shit that I've got to do and not want to do it, and I will procrastinate. If there was an Olympics for procrastination, I'd probably be doing pretty well.
mhm,
And I will procrastinate until it is an emergency and it is a problem. And now my anxiety is skyrocketed, and for me, it's like self-inflicted, right?
mhm,
So timers, baby.
yeah. Yeah, that's a productivity hack actually. If you
Yeah,
look into all that stuff, the time blocking. Yeah, I've gone into that and it helps a lot with getting stuff done, but the anxiety I get from the divorce paperwork is
yeah,
just it's such a different level of anxiety for me.
yeah,
So I
I
think
actually have anxiety prescription. I think it's lorazepam is what I'm prescribed.
yeah,
It definitely kills the like. It definitely gives you. I hate taking it sometimes When my anxiety's super high, it's great because it brings it down a lot. But the thing is it gives me a I don't give a fuck attitude. And I don't like that because it takes away some of the value and enjoyment of life in general. And it's numbing in that certain way. But anxiety. So one thing I've actually found handling my anxiety is I've started going to bed. Whenever I have a major anxiety, like I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go to sleep because there's actually a huge tie connected to a lack of sleep and anxiety. And I've actually found that like if I can go to sleep for a while, I'll actually feel like that's the physiology change that I need. Like going to work out doesn't really do it for me as much as I would like it to, and as much as I've been a gym rat in the past. It's not enough to kill the anxiety that overwhelms me. And just the going to sleep has been one of the most productive outcomes. I've tried meditating it out of the way. I actually woke up really anxious this morning, and it took me like an hour and a half of meditating. Of just like I would sit there and I'd just quietly trying to meditate. And then eventually I got it to a point where I kind of went away enough to the point where I could have a normally functioning day. But most often sleep is usually the biggest problem I have from it. There's the biggest resolve for it.
I can see that.
That's been my methodologies.
Nice.
Any other anxiety resolves?
Trenbolone.
Because that fucking works. Oh, he's not. He's kidding. He's kidding.
What is it?
Tren.
Oh.
Don't don't do that.
I'll just do a cycle. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Little bit. Little Tren and Jerry's. It's not funny.
You can cut that out.
Yeah, we'll grab that one. Yeah, does that
Yeah.
was there anything else in there, Chris? You mentioned you had some points on that. Was there more?
Oh,
Was
I've been hitting them all night, brother.
I know. I've noticed.
I've been
You
noticing
kept
you,
the
dude.
line.
I see you. I see you.
You've done a good job keeping us away.
I was trying to keep it with an hour, but we're at an hour 48. So
I'm in a shit ton of trouble.
Okay, I actually want to ask you guys: Did you guys think we need to start cutting our episodes to an hour?
I feel like if Lucas didn't talk so much, we'd be done half the time.
Probably. I could, not talk. That's the thing.
We like the talking. Well, hey, actually, Lucas, one of your videos, I believe, one of the videos where you're talking in the shorts is up to like 5,000 views in one of the platforms. I think.
No shit. That's cool. So fuck you, Chris.
I think it's
talk some more, bro.
But it doesn't have anything to do with you. It has to do with your daughter having an insightful mind.
Oh,
so
well, yeah. Thanks,
value of the
for
content.
keeping me honest. Still, fuck you, Chris. That's
There's
cool.
your story, bro.
Thanks, baby.
This week's episode is brought to you by False Motivation Coffee.